As Zimbabwe's economy spirals out of control, protesters take to the streets of Harare following the announcement of a massive fuel price hike. Parents of students at an all-girls academy in Liberia anxiously await an investigation into allegations that the charity failed to act on signs of a staff member's sexual abuse. And a growing number of men in South Africa buck tradition and stereotypes to buy and use male grooming products. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Reacting to massive fuel price hike, angry Zimbabwean protesters blocked roads and burned tires in Harare and marched through the streets of Bulawayo in southwest Zimbabwe on Monday. President Emmerson Mnangagwa announced the massive fuel price hike in an effort to stem the nation's worst economic crisis in a decade. A video shot at the protests show hundreds of people walking through the streets chanting and holding placards. Some protesters also dragged large objects into the road to stop traffic. Cash shortages have plunged Zimbabwe's economy into disarray, threatening widespread social unrest and undermining Mnangagwa's efforts to win back foreign investors who were sidelined under his predecessor, Robert Mugabe. Mnangagwa's 150% increase in fuel prices was greeted with shock in Zimbabwe, where unemployment is over 80%. The government sets fuel prices via the Zimbabwean Energy Regulatory Agency. Now, for more on the unrest in Zimbabwe, I'm joined by VOA Zimbabwe reporter Chris Gande. Chris, welcome. And first, really, what is the justification that the government is giving for this astronomical price hike for the fuel?
Yeah, the reasons are not really clear, but what has been happening is that, because of two currencies that, of course, Zimbabwe uses a number of currencies, the US dollar, and the local currency, which is the bond note, which is, of course, they had said earlier it wasn't a currency, but it is what they've been pegging it against the US dollar, saying it's 1:1. But people have been buying a fuel and then selling it on the black market at 1:3 to the US dollar. So instead of, finding other solutions, it seems like the government then decided to increase the price of the fuel to the price that is obtained from the black market.
Now, we have seen doctors go on strike exactly because of not having the kind of money that they want to have. We have seen teachers threaten to do the same. And of course, we've seen in the past people protesting because of just the lack of even currency, their inability to get a hold of money. Now, what are people saying at this time as those prices go up?
They are saying that the situation has gone beyond control because, if you look at the situation today compared to more than a year ago when Robert Mugabe was president, the economic situation has continued to deteriorate, and the recent price hikes are just a manifestation of an economy that has spiraled out of control.
Do we know anything else that the government is doing to try and at least alleviate the situation, other than increasing the price of fuel? And even also there were recent hikes of prices of fines for traffic infractions.
Yes. They have, they've lined up a number of things, including the 2% tax, which they are charging people per transaction on wiring money. Yes. And using, paper money, paperless money, that is the cards and stuff. Yeah. Now, that money, according to them, is bringing in a couple of million per month, $1 million. But of course, people are always asking, where is the money going?
And of course, the other question is, when do we get the money? Because so many of the Zimbabweans we've spoken to also say they don't have access to even the money, and the economy is not doing that well. Chris, we want to thank you very much for joining us today and giving us some insights.
Oh, thank you so much.
That's VOA Zimbabwe reporter Chris Gande. Now, Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir said on Monday that he is not stepping down despite weeks of violent protests and calls for him to quit over a spiraling economic crisis. Sudan has plunged deeper into economic crisis since the southern part of the country seceded after a referendum in 2011, taking away much of the country's oil resources. Protests have rippled across Sudan since December 19th in the most sustained challenger to Bashir's near 30-year rule. Security forces have used live ammunition to disperse demonstrations. The official death toll now stands at 24, including 2 security forces personnel. Amnesty International says that more than 40 people have been killed. Since the protests started nearly 4 weeks ago, more than 800 people have been arrested. Human rights activists say those detained include political activists, civil society members, and journalists. Parents of students at an all-girl American academy in Liberia are anxiously awaiting an investigation into allegations that the charity failed to act on signs of staff members' sexual abuse. A 2018 expose co-published by the U.S.-based research organization ProPublica and Time magazine on the More Than Me Academy sparked public outrage over the widespread rape and exploitation of girls who were supposed to be rescued. But some of the parents are frustrated with how the story has been told and reject calls for the academy to close its doors. Monique John reports from Monrovia.
Some of these Liberian parents have been sending their girls to More Than Me Academy since the charity opened in 2013. But their allegiance is being tested. The academy, which aimed to protect girls by getting them off the street, is being investigated over a rape scandal. The More Than Me Academy was accused in an expose co-published by ProPublica and Time magazine of failing to act as co-founder Macintosh Johnson raped girls as young as 11 years old, infecting at least 3 with HIV. He was arrested in 2014 when the rapes were first reported. But the case ended in a mistrial, and Johnson died in custody. Critics blame American founder Katie Mailer and other staff for ignoring signs of abuse.
They did not have adequate measures in place, adequate procedures in place to be able to deal with these issues. We're not talking. We're talking since 2014. There's been severe negligence on the part of the management of More Than Me, and Katie Mailer is responsible.
Mailer stepped down from the board of the charity, which critics want closed. They say it was never qualified to work with Liberia's vulnerable girls and blame the government for allowing it to operate. But while parents anxiously await the investigation results, some argue the academy still has value. They want the school to stay open and for donors to continue their support.
If this school breaks down tomorrow, the children, they will take the street back. They will still do the same sex for money what they were doing before Katie went and took them from there.
It's not yet clear when the Liberian government will finish the investigation of More Than Me Academy. Parents have welcomed the inquiry, but they are upset it took 4 years, and they don't like the attention. Their children are teased because they attend the academy, which, despite the ongoing investigation, still assists in running 18 schools in Liberia. Monique John for VOA News, Monrovia.
The Democratic Republic of Congo faces growing pressure on Monday from its African neighbors and beyond for a recount of its contested presidential election. The dispute threatens more violence in the volatile nation. Second-place finisher, former ExxonMobil executive Martin Fayulu says he won by a landslide with over 60% of votes. He charges that opposition leader Felix Tshisekedi struck a deal with President Joseph Kabila to be declared the victor. Tshisekedi and Kabila both deny the accusation. The International Conference of the Great Lakes region, a 12-member body, including Kinshasa, allies, Angola, and Republic of Congo, expressed great concern. The Great Lakes statement late on Sunday echoes the Southern African Development Community, which contains allies of Kinshasa like South Africa and Angola. For more on the uncertainties in the DRC, I'm joined by VOA reporter Abdrahman Dia. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Now, we have seen this, particularly these two bodies, the regional blocs, SADC and the other one, say that there has to be a recount. From what you're hearing, could this exert enough pressure on the government and the Electoral Commission to do that?
Enough pressure, I don't know, but it is definitely some pressure there because those two bodies, after the election, gave almost an A, if I may say, to CENI, the Electoral Commission, saying that in the places they have been, things were great. SADC was talking about 90% on the polling station they have visited. What prompted this, I don't know, but it happened like the day after the parliamentary election results were given, which raised even more doubts, I think. So they felt some pressure, SADC and the CRG, to say something like a recount or a government of, union government, something like that. So definitely some pressure there. What will happen by January 22, we'll see.
Now, again, there's this talk of possibility of having a prime minister from the Kabila's coalition join Tshisekedi in government. Is this concrete, or is just some speculation out there?
No, it is real. If the results from the parliamentary election do hold, the position will be from the majority in parliament, which right now is the FCC, the Kabila people, which will be very interesting, I assume, because they will be around, and they actually signaled that they already started talks with the UDPS of Felix Tshisekedi on how to govern.
They're already ready to form the government.
Right.
But now this is again where the confusion is. They say if Fayulu indeed won, then his party has to have a majority because it doesn't make sense to have him win the presidency and then have
Tshisekedi, right?
Tshisekedi rather would have a majority, and therefore the parliamentary elections seem to also tell a story about who might have really won the election, right?
Right. The Tshisekedi's party, UDPS, doesn't even come second, according to the results given by CENI, which is, very odd. Usually when you want to sanction a regime, you also sanction all the people related to it.
Yes.
If you don't like Kabila around anymore, it's very hard to invite them back. But again, what the argument is for them is to say that, well, the coalition is very well implemented throughout the country, which is not the case of other parties, but it's very disputable.
Now, very quickly, from what you're hearing on the ground, are there concerns that actually this dispute could lead to what we feared, chaos?
It could be. It depends. If, for example, Tshisekedi decided that because the Constitution does allow him, if he decides to basically dissolve the parliament because he wants to rule, basically, then, nobody knows what could happen. But if he rules with FCC in control of parliament, he will have also very limited power because they will have the prime ministership. They probably will give themselves some key position like defense, the interior ministry, and the finance. So it's very hard to predict what's going to happen.
It's a very, very interesting drama that we're witnessing there. We really thank you, Abdul, for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
That's VOA reporter Abdurrahman Dia. Now, Britain declared a major incident earlier this month following a sharp increase in the number of migrants trying to cross the 30-kilometer English Channel from France in small boats. And naval patrol vessels are being deployed, and security has been stepped up on both sides of the channel. As Henry Richard reports, the influx and the government's response is playing into a nervous political atmosphere of a migration in Britain.
The naval vessels were pulled back from a joint European Union mission in the Mediterranean and are now patrolling the seas between Britain and France. Home Secretary Sajid Javid questioned the motivation of those seeking asylum in Britain.
If you are a genuine asylum seeker, then why have you not sought asylum in the first safe country that you arrived in? Because, you take France is not a country where anyone would argue is not safe in any way whatsoever.
The government says over 400 migrants have attempted to cross the English Channel from France in the last 3 months, often in inflatable dinghies in the middle of winter. Most appear to be from Iran. It is a journey fraught with danger. This is one of the world's busiest shipping lanes, with strong tides and currents. Instead, most arrive by air. Others try to hide underneath or inside trucks heading to Britain. Experts say increased security in French ferry ports could be driving migrants to attempt the crossing by boat. Nourul Hadi or Yakhel fled the Taliban in his native Afghanistan and came to Britain hidden inside a refrigerated truck 3 years ago, aged just 16.
When it starts and he started the fridge, that was too cold. Like we were just like hugging each other and sit in the middle of the lorry. When he opened the door, we just run away and jump off the lorry. So after we were walking on the motorway, like finally we came to the motorway and police catch us.
Yakhel gained asylum. He was aided by the charity Kent Refugee Action Network, or CRAN, which helps unaccompanied migrant children with housing, education and basic needs. CRAN's Bridget Chapman says the government's reaction to the influx is driven by politics.
It's a crisis in that people are being forced to put their lives at risk to make a claim for asylum. That's completely unacceptable. But I think we're talking about roughly 250 people over 2.5 months. That isn't a crisis. Amongst certain people in power, there's a lot of juggling to see who can be the toughest on migration, because I think they see there may be a chance for a leadership bid. And that, to me, is playing politics with people's lives.
The government denies such accusations and says the deployment of naval vessels is needed to deter people smugglers and migrants from making such a dangerous journey. Others warn the naval ships could persuade more migrants to attempt the journey in the hope that they will be rescued. Henry Richwell for VOA News, Folkestone on the south coast of Britain.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at @VinceMcCory. Still ahead on Africa 54, the male grooming trend reaches the continents. But first, a look at Monday's headlines.
We should not be having so many presidential candidates. I mean, it's like a joke. The US, as big as it is and as successful as it is, you hardly get more than 3 presidential candidates if one was.
Voices, we're talking about the news and issues you're talking about, sharing stories of development and growth across Africa, around the world, and in our lives. Topics that inform, empower, and change the rules. It's time for Our Voices with me, Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick,
and Hadiza Kiari,
and Ayan Bior,
and Orion Itangi Shaka.
It's time for Our Voices.
The frustration of federal workers is mounting as a partial U.S. government shutdown is in its 4th week, becoming the longest federal work stoppage in American history. VOA's Michael Bowman reports from Washington, where finger-pointing abounds amid President Donald Trump's continuing demand for border wall funding and congressional Democrats' refusal to approve it.
Snow blankets the Washington area, but there is no need to close federal buildings. Many have been closed for weeks. Efforts to end the shutdown are also in a deep freeze after President Trump reportedly stormed out of a meeting with congressional leaders when his pleas for border wall funding were rejected once again.
I'm a mother of 5, grandmother of 9. I know a temper tantrum when I see one.
A new poll shows more Americans blame Trump than Democrats for the standoff. But the White House is holding firm, posting this campaign-style video after the president visited the U.S.-Mexico border.
My administration has presented Congress with a detailed proposal to secure the border and stop the criminal gangs, drug smugglers, and human traffickers. Democrats in Congress have refused to acknowledge the crisis.
Trump has hinted he may go around Congress by declaring a national emergency and siphoning funds from other federal projects. Democrats insist no emergency exists and say they will negotiate fully on ways to better secure the U.S.-Mexico border once the partial shutdown ends.
When George W. Bush faced 9/11, he asked us for national emergency powers. We gave it to him on a bipartisan basis, united as a country to fight off terrorism. But if this president is going to turn to national emergencies every time he disagrees with Congress, I'm against it. There should be timely negotiations on border security after the government is open.
Many Republican lawmakers say a national emergency declaration would be a mistake, but blame congressional Democrats for refusing to consider any spending package that includes border wall funding.
The president's put multiple offers on the table. We don't want it to come down to a national emergency declaration. Clearly, the president's got authority under law, but he said he doesn't want it to come to that. He wants Congress to solve this problem.
On Friday, hundreds of thousands of federal workers missed a paycheck and could be denied pay for weeks or even months to come. Sporadic protests have broken out, while essential federal services like airport security screening continue with reduced staffing levels. Michael Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
Well, home to Apple, Facebook, and Google, Silicon Valley in California is an American economic powerhouse producing technology companies with global influence. But behind these influential American brands are scores of foreign workers who play a critical role in Valley's tech workforce. His viewer is Diane Michel.
Pushpa et al. May not fit the stereotype of the typical Silicon Valley CEO. She's female, foreign-born, and a mother. Nevertheless, she's one of the many foreign-born women with thriving technology careers in Silicon Valley, where companies are increasingly relying on workers like her.
Silicon Valley is known for the entire world about building great products that millions of people, hundreds of millions of people use it.
Silicon Valley, the global center for high-tech innovation, could be renamed Immigrant Valley. It is fueled by foreign-born workers, many of whom are from humble roots. And having worked so hard to get here, many have ambitions beyond their day jobs.
Do you want to take this risk and move to a startup? Hey, you know what? I came here all the way. Let's risk it. That drives everything.
In computer science jobs, people born outside the United States make up almost 70% of those in their prime working years. That's especially true for women. Nearly 80% of women in computer and math fields are foreign-born. Most are from India and China.
Countries like India and China, where women's roles are often very subservient. Silicon Valley offers a pathway out. Engineering, in particular, is a pathway towards economic sustainability.
Although the tech industry is still mostly male, more and more foreign-born women are finding success here and are rapidly promoted. Lingling Shi, born in China, saw studying technology as her ticket to success in the U.S.
Computer science, for most of us, feel like it's easier to apply green cards. It's not my main interest, I'll be honest.
Family life is one way that foreign-born women in tech are different than their American counterparts. Despite their demanding careers, they are almost twice as likely to be married, and also much more likely to have children.
I think to Chinese, family is still most important. They will never accept, no matter how successful, my parents will not be happy, oh, you're a VP of engineering now, but you don't have a kid.
Women from India and China are under a set of cultural expectations and norms that they will have a family right away, and they will excel in their careers. So these women are really kind of super women in terms of the tasks that they take on.
But that parental pressure also comes with perks.
Typically for Asian family, like parents will be here when the time you're about to deliver the baby, then they will be here for like a half year, 1 year.
Support like that can make a real difference.
They will get to those leadership roles a lot more quickly than their American-born peers who don't have the support that they need.
They may not be household names or on the covers of business magazines yet, but these immigrants are likely to be the talent fueling the next wave of tech innovation. Dina Mitchell for VOA News, San Jose, California.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. 2 decades ago, well-groomed male celebrities began to change traditional attitudes towards masculinity. South Africa has been slow to catch the metrosexual wave, but a growing middle class and the spread of fashion trends on social media has seen global companies such as Unilever, Procter & Gamble, and L'Oreal target more products at African men. Salon chains are opening men-only parlors to sell these products and to meet the demand for everything from manicures to eyebrow threading. Trend analysts say African youth are a tasty target for marketers hungry to sell to young males around the continent who are increasingly more conscious of their appearance. Well, next up, opened a few months ago in the district of Madi, the Art Cafe is becoming increasingly popular among Cairo's young art enthusiasts. The eatery provides a cozy setting for customers to practice their hobbies and develop their talents, says owner Fatih Al-Said. The cafe also caters to a variety of activities from painting and singing to studying and playing board games. All the equipment needed for painting or singing, as well as all board games, are provided by the cafe free of charge. Customers' finished paintings are placed on display inside the cafe on a wall that Al-Sayed dedicates to the customers' art. And finally, HBO has released its first official tease trailer for the 8th and final season of its hit Emmy-winning drama Game of Thrones. The debut date for the much-anticipated 6-episode season has been set for Sunday, April 14th. Game of Thrones, which has won multiple Emmy Awards, is HBO's biggest hit ever, with some 30 million viewers in the United States and an army of devoted fans worldwide. The series is based on novels by George R.R. Martin in a series called A Song of Ice and Fire. And that's what's trending today. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com for more news. Tune in to VOA's evening radio show Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC and in the mornings today, Break Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.